Steve Joyner here, author of Bitcheye Commando, and I put in another video blog based upon a few things. Number one is I like watching the Logic Junkie. He's not real fancy, but I'll tell you one thing, he's very honest, and I like his level of integrity, and I respect that. So he makes a lot of commentaries, and they're very entertaining, very educational, and informative. Now, one thing I'd like to say before I get into the Logic Junkie is I want to say one thing about Bitcheye Commando. For those guys who like to tell war stories who've never been in the military, this book is for you. You know, let's face it, if you're going to be telling war stories and there's military in the group, you may want to get some of your facts straight. Well, this book is full of a lot of facts about the military. A lot of it comes from bugle notes, as the West Pointers know that very well. It also gives a lot of branch information, a lot of detailed information about the structures, and it even goes into things like the CEOI, which is actually a very important part of the book. So if you want to read it for entertainment purposes, that's fine. But if you want to go around telling these, well, if you want to be a poser, it's a very good reference book, it's a very good Bible. So it could help that way too. Today, what did I do today? Well, I went to the Holocaust Museum, and it was kind of interesting, but the one thing that I couldn't help but think, there's a lot of similarities when history repeats itself. And, well, I was kind of taken back because I was thinking, could this ever happen again? It shouldn't happen again, but could it happen again? Well, I'm afraid I don't know if I like the answer to that. Now, let's talk about the Logic Junkie real quick. He mentioned a book by Kevin Gutzman called The Politically Incorrect Guide to the U.S. Constitution. Good book. However, if we want to go a step further, I'm going to recommend another book called Original Intent by David Barton. That gives you a lot more detail about how the Constitution was founded and why. Now, there's two versions of the book. One's abridged, one's unabridged. Get the unabridged version. Now, this goes into the mindset and the education of our forefathers and how our country developed. And it did develop as a federation of sovereign states. And it also included rules and regulations that would govern other sovereign states to be admitted into the federation. You probably don't know anything about that now because we are not a federation. We are one country, and the capital is Washington, D.C., which governs all. States are not sovereign. And but at one time, they were considered sovereign in the original intent. Now, why do you think that reading was so important to our forefathers? Well, it was important to them, but maybe not for the reasons you might think. They thought it was important to know reading and education because they just experienced a lot of atrocities back in Europe, to include the Spanish Inquisition and the iron fist of people like King George III. That being the case, they insist upon addressing education at a very early age with the old deluder Satan law, which meant that if you wanted to be one of the sovereign states within the Federation, you were going to have to establish an educational system for the children. And it was based upon moral principle, and they used the King James Version of the Bible as their book of wisdom. Now, it wasn't that they wanted to tell people how to believe or how to think, but they did insist that they have moral guidelines and moral standards. And when you look at what goes on in a lot of the courts today, you wonder, are these people keeping in mind the original intent of the Constitution, what the forefathers really wanted? They wanted a strong nation. They wanted free people. They wanted freedom. They wanted people to do well and prosper. And they addressed that through education with moral fiber, and our laws were kind of based upon that, but we got away from it very quickly. Whether it was people like Judge Marshall, who were more concerned about their own power, I don't know. But it seems that we have forgotten our original intent. And I think these moral virtues that our forefathers displayed, well, I think they ought to be looked at again. Why? guess maybe I don't want to see a Holocaust in my lifetime. Just going to the Holocaust Museum is bad enough, but I certainly don't want to experience that again. And I think it could happen again if we're not careful. So I would recommend reading the original intent, unabridged version by David Barton. And you'll learn a lot about our forefathers and their education, their way of thinking, their moral fiber. Would you believe that Harvard, Princeton, and Yale actually required people to read the Bible and be accountable for the information in the Bible? And during that time frame, we had Noah Webster that gave us the dictionary. The dictionary is not the law of the language, but a record of the law of the language. Noah Webster, the man who taught millions to read, but not one man to sin. Here's to the logic junkie, Kevin Gutzman, who wrote The Politically Incorrect Guide to the U.S. Constitution, and to David Barton, and to all of those who had some type of feeling after being at the Holocaust Museum. Steve Joyner, who's also recognized in Bitcheye Commando. Hope to see you again.